Hello.
Hey,
Hi,
how are
Ruth.
you? Good. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So how are you doing today?
I'm good. I've been coaching most of the day, so
So you're warmed up, huh?
yeah. Yes, definitely warmed up, and I had some great coaching clients today as well. So it was made it a lot of fun. It makes a big difference to, depending on not so much the clients, so they're all great. It's, sometimes they're focused on a problem or something, and other times it's more exploration. I really love the exploration sessions, more about, how do they tackle things and who are they being, rather than what's the problem and what are they going to do about it. So
I think that would make for kind of a very interesting journey and just a different story every time, because every person in every scenario you're going to hear is going to be completely coming at things from a different angle.
right. Keeps it interesting. So
I read something in a book the other day, and I thought about you because I like the elephants that you use for the Project Motivator. And I was reading a book that was recommended to me, The Go-Giver, and it said that everybody approaches the elephant different because the elephant looks completely different to whoever is viewing it. So their perception on how they're going to tackle it, just varies. Hey, Jared.
Hey. Good evening. How's everyone?
good. So can you hear a strange grinding sound in the background? Because if you are, it's one of my dogs chewing the bone.
I don't think I hear it. No.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because to me it sounds incredibly loud, but it keeps them from, woofing and fussing and carrying on. So I just, I prefer, if I can, to let them do it, but they're right outside my door because they would rather be in here with me, but that's not going to work, especially as I have 2 rabbits in here, so I don't want to be interested.
How many dogs do you have? How many dogs do you have?
2. So we got 2 in February. When we got them, they were adorable, now 9-pound puppies, and now they are adorable 42-pound puppies.
Oh, wow.
And they are 6 months old, so there's probably some growth to go.
My aunt has a sheepadoodle that she got about a year ago, and it was so cute when it was little, and now it's a moose, which it's still adorable, but it's a moose now. So trying to take it for a walk, it pretty much takes you down the valley.
Yeah, exactly. But walking these 2 together, it's 80 pounds of dog, and they're still puppies. So it's great as long as they don't want to go in 2 different directions, because then I'm sort of like.
Right. Well, we've got some time before we have you start speaking. We had a little bit over 100 people register, and so right now I show about 24 participants, but it takes a little time for everybody to get signed on. And what we've been seeing this year, is usually about 60% of who register winds up showing up. So one of the questions that I'd pose to the group, that I'd like to either encourage y'all to come off and chat with us directly or put in the chat, is if y'all have had any experience when taking courses in LinkedIn Learning. And if so, maybe even mentioning the different type of topic. So I'd love to see some of that feedback. As incidentally, whenever I was looking at the registration, we do have some people that you may know, Ruth, too, that are joining us. So Oliver Yarborough, that's also a LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
And a couple of other people from PMI too, that are also LinkedIn instructors, I think, are going to be joining tonight. So I think it's cool. I think the variety of different meetings and different speakers brings out a really cool energy.
Yeah.
Hey, Tanya, it's Luann Daniel. How are you?
Hi, good, Luann.
Hi, greetings from Houston. My company actually has a LinkedIn subscription for us. So that's where we're being asked to go and take classes that are germane to our work I'm looking at a lot of PM classes. Some have been really good and had new material or new to me. And it's not like I've been in project management that long that it would all be new. Some of the stuff though, feels a little contrived, a little too acted. I don't know. I see you shaking your head, Ruth. So yeah, some of the sessions are a little like, and the Academy Award goes to, but it's great to have it. And my company makes it available to us. So it's cost effective for me. And I can do a lot of my PMP PDUs that way as well.
Yeah.
That was whenever in my last job, when I was running a PMO, I paid for those subscriptions for all of the guys on my team too, for the same reason, right? It was like, yeah, every once in a while there'd be some new skill set. We picked up Power BI and we started wanting to do dashboarding. So it was nice to have some place they could go and do some learning, right? Without having to go and just kind of cowboy it all the way through. It used to be lynda.com, right? Lynda.com became LinkedIn Learning. And I was exposed to it whenever I was, a couple of jobs ago when I was studying for my PMP. But yeah, I think that's one of the nice things about the LinkedIn Learning program, right? Is that, it's really not that expensive. I mean, it's maybe a couple $100 a year for each person that you want to get subscribed to it. And, if you've got a PMO, 5 people or so, it's really only $1,000. It's not hard to budget for, and really have a place they can go to learn just any odds and ends stuff, right? That may come up during the year, right? Either whether they're sharpening their saw or whether there's, again, some new technology stack or some new cloud-based tool that you want to get them exposed to help run the shop. So, and that was my experience with it. It was great. I mean, I did a couple courses myself. They were good. To me, they were kind of garden variety, online type of learning courses, right? Nothing terrible. Not really my chosen way to learn anyway, but they did the trick.
I think it's cool because it enables sharing too. And I know Udemy does as well. I know there's various learning platforms that are out there, but with LinkedIn, I've kind of found that LinkedIn has been just really great for connecting all of us, and even the PMI chapter, and even me networking with different PMI chapters in different states. So having that access, like, I went and I took some of Ruth's courses where you can share it immediately and give it a review and share with your network. And I do think I've seen you share some, Luann and Amy, I did see your Agile courses too, or business analytics. And then Jacques said Agile courses. So I think that's a good idea circle when we share that, when we finish them. It just gives other people ideas of something that they may be thinking about too, that they needed to learn. So I love that ability right there. Well, we still got about 5 minutes. I'm gonna go over just kind of some brief announcements before we get started. So a couple of things from the PMI side of the house. So this is PMI National. PMI National is having their global summit at the end of the year. It's going to be a several-day event taking place on November 30th through December 3rd in Las Vegas. Unlike a lot of the other events, they have opened that registration to pretty much everybody. So if you are a practitioner, a thought leader, or just simply involved in the group and you want a vacation and go to see more what PMI from a global perspective is about, I would encourage y'all to go to pmi.org and check that out in the learning events section. They've got a lot of information. And then on our chapter announcements, we are celebrating a 25-year anniversary this year. We are doing a save the date on September 15th at Oak Lodge, which is going to be in Baton Rouge. So we'll be communicating more information on that soon. And I did want to let y'all know that we've got our virtual events are booked through October. So if y'all go to the PMI to our website on pmibatonrouge.org and check out our calendar, you can actually access those events that are up there right now and register a little bit early. And as you know, this year, the virtual events have all been free. They're limited to 500 people. We have yet to hit that. So, but those are out there through October, and we should be getting November and December's shortly as well and communicating other events. And then Paul Skinner, I caught the earlier, my niece just took a strapping on her pair of rollerblades, getting her great per niece to pull her around the neighborhood, the risks of dogs. So, well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. For formality's sake, for introductions, this is Ruth Pearce, who's going to be presenting for us tonight. I've been following Ruth in the PMI community for some time, and her courses on project motivation and project burnout had caught my attention. So I reached out to her to see if she might be willing to present for our chapter. And while we were talking, we kind of hit upon the idea that since she's a LinkedIn course creator, that it might make for a really interesting story for her to tell us about her past experience and what led her to her recent career. In addition to this, she's also an author, and she also works with the VIA Institute on character strengths, as well as project coaching. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ruth.
All right, thank you. So in true project management tradition, I have a PowerPoint presentation. We don't have to get too hung up on there, but I thought it would, well, I'll actually share the slides afterwards so that you can keep some notes of what might be helpful. So yes, I am a 3-time LinkedIn Learning instructor. My 3 topics that are out there are on burnout for project managers, mindfulness, a critical skill for project managers, and also there's it's from project, I think it's called From Project Manager to Project Motivator, and it's about using the VIA character strengths as a way of engaging teams and getting people to work well together. I'm very excited that I've been able to do them, and so when I was talking to Tanya, we thought it might be helpful for me to share a little bit of my story, and also some of the tips around how you get to be a LinkedIn Learning instructor. Hold on, I'm just going to change this view so that I can see more faces, because all I can see is my slide at the moment. Well, I can't see any faces because everybody's got their camera turned off. Okay, can you all do me a favor and just for 30 seconds, if you're able, turn your camera on so that I can just do a quick check to make sure that you're not hiding under a kitchen table, rocking back and forth, stress beyond belief. Okay, so people are looking as though they are alive and well, which is great. Thank you very much, all of you, for turning your cameras on. So I do this in every meeting just as a check-in to make sure anyone who is not putting their camera on, I'm making a note of your name and I'll be in touch later just to, no, I'm just kidding. I was going to follow up. So yeah, I like to check in, and I know people have mixed feelings about being on camera, but it is great to be able to see people's faces and be able to see that, as I say, that you are alive and well. 2 years ago, we were doing some coaching for another project management chapter, and actually one of the people who was in our group coaching, so we did a lot of group coaching, she showed up, and the transition because of COVID from working in the office to working at home was really stressing her out. And we were actually able to track her progress through the coaching by how she looked on camera, because the first time we saw her on camera, you know, her hair was tied back and it didn't look as though she'd washed her hair in a while. She had the curtains drawn and she was sitting in the dark, and I'm pretty sure that she was wearing furry slippers and pajama bottoms and just a t-shirt on top. And over the 2 or 3 weeks that we were doing this coaching, we saw the curtains open, and you know, she started sort of doing her makeup again. I don't wear makeup, so I'm not particularly concerned about that. She was doing her makeup again, and she kind of found her balance. So it's nice to be able to see people's face and make sure that they've got their balance. So how did I go? And I do encourage questions. Please open up your microphones if you're able to, and ask questions as you think of them. Or put questions in the chat. I do not mind at all if we knock me off course and distract me from what it was I was going to say. If there's some question that you want to ask, throw it out there because it's probably something other people are thinking about as well. So how do you get to be a LinkedIn learning instructor? Well, officially, you fill in this lovely little instructor application here. The address is here, and as I say, I'm going to share this as a PDF afterwards. And really what you're going to share with them is a relevant topic. Now, they're always looking for particular topics and particular topics for particular audiences. So one of the reasons why they were interested in me, and I'll tell you exactly how I got into doing it in a moment. One of the reasons they were interested in me was because I was focused on project managers. I coach project managers, I've been a project manager for many years, and I wanted to create content specifically for project managers for two reasons. One is there isn't a lot of content out there in the sort of higher skills, social intelligence, interacting with other people, taking care of ourselves, what some people call soft skills. I think they're anything but soft. There aren't many of those targeted at project managers. You sometimes see those kind of courses targeted at attorneys or healthcare workers, which is obviously very needed. And people don't necessarily identify project managers either as a profession or as a group of people who are facing some of those stressful situations. So LinkedIn got pretty interested pretty quickly because my target audience was project managers. I did need to have a LinkedIn profile. They want to know that you are a LinkedIn user, that you're not just showing up because you're seeing the opportunity to do your business through them, and they are interested in your number of followers. Now, at this point, I have over 20,000 followers. When I first contacted LinkedIn and started the conversation about doing some courses, I had about 2,500 followers. So while they are interested in the number of followers that you have, it doesn't have to be a crazy high number. The other thing they're interested in is concentration. So if you have 2,500 project managers, for example, I'll just stick with that example. If you have 2,500 project manager followers, that's of more interest to them than say 10,000 followers that are all over the map and are not necessarily going to be part of your target audience. They're interested in your type of audience. They want to know who do you have in mind. So very often when people are creating content, they want things to be generally applicable. They want it to be interesting to everybody. They want a book that's useful to everybody. The challenge with that is no one can identify that it's really targeted on them. And we're actually better off being able, and coaches find this too, and I'm in the coaching space, we're actually better off narrowing down our audience and saying, I'm really focused on these kinds of people. And then other people will say, well, that will probably apply to me as well. And you still get a broader audience. But when we say this is for everybody, it actually communicates to people that it's kind of for nobody, because I can't look and go, oh yeah, I'm in that group, I'm a project manager, or I'm a woman in the workplace, or I am a transplant from another country, or whatever that audience is. I don't want to belong to the group that is everybody, because that doesn't, identify something that is specific to me. I've mentioned a relevant topic. They very often have, so it needs to be a topic relevant to your audience. It quite often needs to be a needed topic. And by needed, I mean either they're targeting to build out some content around the topic, or you can make the case that it's needed. So for example, my first course, which was on character strengths and team building, I made the case that project managers need that information in order to build effective teams, that whether the project manager is officially in charge of a team or not has nothing to do with their need to be able to cultivate teamwork and cultivate team collaboration. And I was able to persuade them of that. We want to make sure that, so we've got the type of audience you're aiming at. We want that to align with the highest proportion of your audience. So those followers that you've got, if you've got 10,000 followers in nursing and you say that your program is going to be for airline pilots, they're probably going to say, well, you know what, how are you going to pull people in to look at that, because they're not immediately going to identify you as someone who has anything to do with airline pilots. It's much easier to do this if you're passionate about your topic, because it is a very methodical, it's actually a very impressive process, and I'm going to go into that in a few minutes. But if you don't have a passion for the topic, so if you get into the thing of, you know, everybody needs to know about Agile, let's say, but you're actually not that passionate about Agile, then it can be very difficult to sustain your interest. You want it to be something where you're, you know, you really feel kind of compelled to share. Maybe it's a topic that you talk about all the time. And you also want to be clear about why LinkedIn. So not just why online courses, but why LinkedIn in particular. Is it because this is something that's very applicable to the workplace? Is it because you like something about the way LinkedIn does things? What and why is it that you want to be presenting information? So why do you want to go out there and share what you know about something? Everyone needs a little video. It doesn't have to be super sophisticated, but they do need to be able to see a recording of you to be able to say, yeah, you've got something, right? They can imagine having you in a studio or recording in your house, and that you being able to do a good job and deliver the content in an interesting way. And that kind of goes back to what we were discussing earlier about whether it seems very rehearsed and kind of stiff, or whether it feels conversational and like there's a natural quality to the way the person is presenting. And they are trying to steer towards people who seem more conversational. I'm not going to make any comment on whether I'm successful at that. You can judge for yourself by looking at one of the courses or all of them. It is a bonus if you can do things in multiple languages. The recordings are all being done in English, as far as I know at the moment. Certainly they were all being done in English, but they are looking to branch out so that they can cover other things. So any other language capability that you're competent and confident enough to be able to deliver in that language will also be beneficial. And surprise, surprise, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You don't need an introduction. But if you have someone who is a LinkedIn learning instructor who can speak to the quality of what you do and can recommend you, it certainly makes it easier to start having the conversation, because I don't know how many people they get going through this application process, but I'm sure it's many more people than they are looking for, you know, to be speakers. They have 16,000 courses. So we were talking earlier about, you know, the extent of what's available. There are over 16,000 courses that are available. So when you get that membership that we were talking about earlier, that $200 membership, that gives you access to every single one of those LinkedIn learning courses. You can take as many courses as you want. They've just started developing something called learning pathways, where they actually knit courses together that are related to each other. So there's a project management pathway that is developing a project management or something, I think it's called. And it's a mixture of courses. So there's one of my courses, there's a course by Andy Jordan, there's a course by Brian Tracy, and they're all combined together in a logical sequence. And at the end, you get a micro certification in that course. So you'll be able to put a badge on your LinkedIn profile to say, you know, that I completed that training. So it really is sort of an end-to-end experience, which is one of the reasons why I liked the idea of doing it with them, was because they basically provide all the resources. You show up and provide the content, they record it for you, they do all the production work for you, and then they put it out there. You can share it with people. You have 24 hours to share it for free, all sorts of things like that. And as I say, when the user goes in and uses it, they take the LinkedIn learning people take care of making sure that they get a PDU for the course if it's for a project manager. They make sure that the person can automatically generate their certificate of completion and also their badge to put on their LinkedIn profile. So all of that is taken care of, which I really, really like. One thing they don't do a huge amount of, just like book publishers, is they don't do a huge amount of promotion and marketing. They will promote your course for a little while, but they may be releasing 15 other courses in that week. And obviously they're promoting everybody's. So they are looking very much like book publishing. They're looking to you to actually be able to get out to your network and say, hey, come look at the course, come look at the course. And how do you get paid? You get paid by number of views. Now, I would love to be able to tell you the exact algorithm. They don't share the exact algorithm, but what they do is they have a bucket of money that is allocated to paying LinkedIn instructors. They measure the total number of views of all the LinkedIn courses over the course of a month. And then they measure your views as a proportion of that total. And then they share out that bucket of money based on what your proportion is. So obviously more views does better for you, but it's not as simple as if you get 10 views, you get this much. If you get 100 views, you get 10 times as much. It doesn't work that way, and it varies. I think it varies from month to month, but I can't speak to that in huge detail. Very much like book publishing, they do offer an advance when you do it, so you can get some money up front, and then they use your royalties based on those views that people actually watching the course. They use those royalties first of all to pay down the advance, and then they start paying you once the advance is paid off. And typically they give the advance in 2 pieces, and usually the total advance is about somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000, but sometimes they give a little more if it's someone who's more established. You don't have to take an advance. In my most recent course, I did not take an advance because I decided I wanted to be able to see income right away as soon as the course was launched, instead of having to wait for my course to catch up with the advances. That makes sense because I've heard a lot about different writing platforms such as Medium changing different algorithms, and it impacts the payout that the creators or authors receive. Yes, so it's one of the things that it can be a little bit frustrating. There's an instructors group in LinkedIn, and they meet every month to update us on things that are changing and things that we might want to do to promote our courses and things like that. And very often the question comes up about, can we have the algorithm? And the answer is always no. What I have noticed is that my payments, because I get a royalty statement every month, my payments or my allocations seem to be pretty consistent. So it isn't, jumping around all over the place. They're pretty consistent based on the numbers of people watching the courses. So, I'm pretty confident that it is being done in a consistent way and it's being done in the right way, but you can't double check it. That's the one thing that I don't like, is that I can't sit down, do the calculation and say, okay, it should have been 20 cents more or 20 cents less, maybe. So I mentioned that one of the bonuses that can help you move forward, I mentioned the language thing, but I also said, who can help you? As I mentioned at the beginning, I was very fortunate because I had a contact in Andy Jordan. Some of you may know Andy Jordan. He and I were in the process of being invited to be keynote speakers at the University of Arizona conference back in 2020. And because we were the opening and closing keynote, we were talking to each other about what are you going to do and what are you going to talk about, and how do we make sure that we kind of bookend the conference so that we actually use the keynote for what it traditionally is supposed to be, which is the key topic. Why are we all meeting today? How do we open it up and how do we close it in a consistent way? Well, surprise, surprise, 2020, the conference got cancelled. But by the time the conference got cancelled, I had got to know Andy a little bit, and he is a big LinkedIn learning instructor. He has many, many courses. I don't even know how many courses. I've seen some instructors who have content on LinkedIn as well as other platforms. I'm guessing they want to hit as many algorithms as possible. I'll come to that in a moment. So I met Andy Jordan, and I got talking to him one day, and I said, how did you ever get into the LinkedIn thing? I didn't even have any intention at that point I knew sometime in the future I wanted to do LinkedIn learning if I could, but at that moment in time, I didn't think I was ready. yet. You know, I wasn't thinking that this was the time to do it. And so when he said to me, well, I can introduce you to the content manager if you want, I was like, I don't know. Wasn't quite ready, didn't know that that was an option. So, but I decided to take him up on it. And he introduced me to Amy Sell, who's since moved on to a slightly different role in LinkedIn. People who work at LinkedIn love working at LinkedIn, by the way, so they tend to stay and move on within the organization. So he introduced me to Amy Sell, who was incredibly responsive and incredibly helpful, and basically walked me through what we're going to talk about now and said, you know, this is what we have to do. So my first question to all of you is, if you're thinking about doing something like this, and Paul mentions there are other platforms, Udemy is another one, there's several out there. They all have slightly different models of how they do things. Some of them, they do the recording for you, like LinkedIn does. Some of them, they have requirements for how the recording is done. You take care of it. You know, there's different models out there. But if you were going to do a course, what's your why? Think about that for a moment. Is it because you love to learn and you love to share what you know with other people? Is it because you think that it might be a way to get some passive income once the course is created? And love of kerning. I don't know how many people know what kerning is. I had to have a third rhyming one, and the only thing I could think of was kerning, which is the spacing of letters and whether they look evenly spaced is, you know, based on the dark space or the light space around each of the letters. That's kerning. So it doesn't really exactly work, but I thought I would throw it out there. So what would be your why? Why might you want to get into being a LinkedIn learning instructor? And feel free to either unmute or put it in the chat. What have you thought about?
I've always found the teaching process to be fascinating, and just, even if we don't have, you know, like a lot of times I'll tell people I stumble over my words constantly, you know, but just having that form of practice and just being able to share the ideas and just being able to even unlock ideas in others and have that collaboration back and forth and teach each other.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And we've got some comments as well. So Diane said that about helping women to avoid the pitfalls that she's experienced. Yes, those kind of things about what have I learned along the way can be very, very popular and very successful courses. And they're helpful to people because it gives them the opportunity for their experiences to be normalized as well. So when we ask that question about who will listen to me, it might be people like me, you know, who want to know how not to go through some of the things that they hear that I've been through. Paul says, I've been doing IT support for over 20 years. I love the feeling of helping a customer not only solve their problem, but feeling empowered to solve something similar next time. Yeah, so being able to present courses that allow people to do things repeatedly, you know, so what's their process? How do they develop a process of tackling things? Love teaching others because I end up learning something in the process. That's actually why I put love of learning up there. The strength of love of learning is not just about learning information yourself, it's also about sharing information with others. So as you learn something, going out and sharing it with other people. And we very often learn in the course of that, like as I've worked with LinkedIn Learning teams, I've learned things from them that I have incorporated into the course. Or sometimes they'll give me, I like quotes, and they'll give me a more obscure, more interesting quote from somewhere or something like that I incorporate. And then sharing ideas in a way that resonates with others. Lessons learned. Yeah, so we're project managers, right? So lessons learned, not just what lessons do we learn, but also how do we incorporate those lessons learned into future projects and future things that we do. So it's about experience, it's about knowledge, and it's about sharing all of those things, practical suggestions, being able to share with people what we've learned over the years, and you will notice that a lot of the LinkedIn Learning instructors are middle-aged and above rather than super young, because they haven't had a lot of time to learn things. Some people have said to me, why would you do this? It's speaking. Ooh, icky, uncomfortable. If you'd said that to me 3 or 4 years ago, I would have agreed with you that speaking is very uncomfortable. I have come to love it. It's like a giant conversation to me. And as was mentioned before, I learn things from the audience. You know, I get ideas from the audience. So I'm always learning something new. If I ever do this presentation again, I will have other things to incorporate into it, because I will take some of the things that are in the chat and, you know, weave those into the story. And one of the questions I used to ask myself is, who am I to think I have anything to say? I have 2 short stories about that. One is, a friend of mine said, her answer was, who are you not to share what you know? You know, who are you to think that you should keep stuff to yourself or not try to share with somebody, even if there's only one person out there that gets benefit? And you know that LinkedIn are going to evaluate the value of your course. So if they want to record it, they believe there are going to be people out there that want to hear it. And the other thing I learned was from a yoga instructor. She is now a yogini, so at the top of her profession. And she said when she started her yoga teacher training, she was told she needed to get clients and practice teaching yoga with them. And she said, but I don't know anything. And her teacher said to her, you only need to know more than the people in the room with you. So you don't have to be the absolute expert at the absolute pinnacle of a topic. We don't have to be Simon Sinek or, you know, Brene Brown or somebody like that. If we are someone that can translate some concepts into language that is meaningful to our audience in a way that someone else wouldn't necessarily be able to, or even in the same way that someone else does, but it's to a different subset of that audience. You know, maybe we're talking about a topic in English where there's already a course in Spanish, but we're the ones who do an English version of a similar course. You know, as long as there are people who can learn from us, then we have something to say and we have something to share, which I found that perspective very valuable. So your what? We had your why, people being motivated to share their experience, to help women avoid pitfalls that they've experienced, teaching in order to learn something. What would you teach? We've had the example already that Paul said about problem solving after 20 years in IT. What are some things that fit these criteria for you? So you have a passion about it, you have some knowledge about it that means you know more than somebody somewhere, you have an opinion about it. So you've got something to say where you're going to share a perspective on it, not just information. It's something useful to a group of people, and you can define how it's useful, why it's useful, who the group of people is. You want it to be a group that is accessible to you. So as we mentioned at the beginning, your followers and hopefully a group of people who have some, at least a substantial number of them have a consistent interest and a consistent focus. And there's some reason why you'll be credible to that group. So again, if I stood up and started talking to nurses about how to manage their burnout, that probably isn't going to be very compelling because I'm not a nurse. But if I am talking to project managers and they know that I experienced burnout and I'm talking about how to avoid it, I have some credibility because I am a project manager who did burnout. So those kind of things. So I'm going to give you a moment to think about what are some 1 or 2 word topics. And again, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself. So I've got 5 here. So brainstorm a little bit. What are 5 1 or 2 word topics that meet those criteria for you? And don't be shy. I'm not going to copy this chat down and publish it. It's not going on any social media. What are your topics that you're passionate about, knowledgeable about, have opinions on, you feel it's useful to somebody, it's a group of people that you can reach and that you're credible with? Team building, great, Cheryl, okay. Very valuable to project managers. What else? Workers play. Wonderful. Oh, I love that, Jason. Let me know when that's released and I'm going to watch that. Imposter syndrome. Thank you, Kelly. Strategic planning. Great. There aren't many people who can actually do strategic planning, so much needed. Imposter syndrome is very much up front and center at the moment, like burnout. Team building, we always need that. You know, we always need to be thinking of different ways to integrate teams. Career pivots, yes. Transitions. How do you navigate transitions and changes, whether they be forced upon you or it's by choice that you're going to make that pivot? Getting people to want to work for you, yes, motivation. So how do you motivate people using both extrinsic and tapping into their intrinsic motivators? So that's actually one of the things I touch on in my first course, is about how you motivate people by identifying their strengths. But those top strengths are those things that really drive them to do what they do. And when you can tap into those strengths, that it makes it easier to connect with people and get them to participate, which comes back to the team building. So yeah, some great ideas out there. And I'm sure other people have got some ideas that they're quietly keeping to themselves. Leadership coaching for long-term benefits. Love that, Ernest. So, and if you're sitting there saying, I don't think I want to share my idea because someone else might take it, I completely understand. There's a lot of that out there too. So my topics were things like character strengths of project manager or project motivation. So that capturing that topic of how do you motivate people on the project to get stuff done? Mindfulness for project managers. So, and it was described as a critical skill. So how do you integrate mindfulness into your everyday? Not sit down and meditate for 45 minutes at a time or go on retreats or any of that. How do you integrate mindfulness into the day and what are the benefits? How does that work for you as a project manager? And then the last one was identifying and preventing burnout, because I've seen that in many, many project managers over the last couple of years. And so, it was burnout in project management. So again, very simple concept of burnout. What can we say about burnout? Preventing it, identifying it, what causes it, all of that kind of stuff for project managers. And that was my audience. Mindfulness for project managers, team building for project managers using character strengths. Imposter syndrome and career pivot has been a topic I heavily discussed in the past 2 days, Rosalind. So there you go, you're all ready to do it. And we've got some other people to work with. So, and that's something else LinkedIn is starting to look at, is co-presentation. And it's much easier for them to do that when they're doing stuff in the studio. We'll come to the sort of logistics in a moment. Okay, so there's your what. And as I mentioned, your knowledge doesn't have to be encyclopedic. It only needs to be enough. You want it to be solid. You want it to be evidence-based. You want it to be accurate based on what people know today. And obviously, research and science changes things as we go along, right? Several hundred years ago, we would have been talking about flat Earth, and then we found that wasn't true. So, but we want it to be consistent with what is, is the current thinking. Is anyone actually speaking? I'm just hearing some static and white noise. Hopefully other people are hearing me.
I can hear you.
Okay. May just be you and me, Tanya. So, and Paul's not going to be able to hear me say this, but he might need to sign out and sign back in. So having enough knowledge to be able to know what you know and what you don't, so that you know the boundaries of your knowledge and that you don't go into things, and when you're expressing opinion rather than fact, because that's, having an opinion is great, but you want to be able to say, I have an opinion on this. This is my opinion, as opposed to a fact on something. You want to be very clear about which thing you're doing at any given time. So the who are your people that you would talk to? So, and think across professional age groups. We're talking about LinkedIn learning here. So it isn't a platform that is heavily used by high schools, for example. So if you have topics that you think would really benefit an audience that's in that sort of 14 to 17, 14 to 18, even 14 to 22, I would say, LinkedIn probably isn't the place to do it. But still think about who are those age groups, and then you can research what are the platforms that serve those age groups as well. Where are they? Where do you know them from? Is it work? You know, are you thinking about, in my case, I was focusing on project managers. So it was kind of work and community related and professional associations all rolled into one, because, you know, I was active in PMI. So where can you look for people? Some people look in their communities. You know, it might be I have one person who is going to be presenting an idea to do coaching, sort of coaching ideas for people who volunteer and run churches. And it was very kind of inspirational to me, because I never really thought about there being an audience on LinkedIn, but apparently there are large numbers, so I'm told, I can't verify this, haven't verified this, but there are large numbers of leaders in churches who are active on LinkedIn, because they're very often active in other workplaces as well. Are you going to target schools? So I said, probably not high schools, right? But maybe university lecturers and faculty. You know, is it going to be nurses and doctors? And are they on LinkedIn? Again, thinking about that. And then the geographic locations. Where do you have pockets of associations? So I have quite a lot of followers in Canada and in Brazil and in the US and in Europe. My Brazilian followers love the project management stuff. They also love the VIA character strength stuff. And so who's it going to land with, you know, in terms of your overall network? Great business advice in general, focusing on the why, the who, refining your strategies and audiences. Great, thank you, Tanya. So give that some thought. Where are some places, who are some groups that you think you could tap into if you were going to do a course, whether it's on LinkedIn or anywhere else? Everyone's gone very quiet and shy. Project managers who want to learn how to interject more fun into their team activities. Oh yeah, I like that one. So that would go with that. Workers play. Play helping work is another way of looking at that. There's a great book by Stuart Brown on play and how play is beneficial and helps creativity. So thinking about where you can find your people. Okay, so what's our approach? That's difficult because I don't have large network connections. So it doesn't have to be necessarily your existing LinkedIn network right now. It could be, and I realize you may be talking about in person, but is there an association you belong to? Is there a professional organization that you find out how play helps creativity, bookmarking for any interested? Yes, so the book is actually just called Play, I think, but the book goes in, and it's Stuart Brown. It goes into how it makes us more creative, and that's actually how kids are creative, is because they play so much. They're experimenting. Essentially, they're constantly experimenting with things. Okay, so how do we do it? So let's imagine we've been through that process. I don't know what that is, sorry. So I've found my topic. I have put some stuff together to show the content manager what happens next. So what they do is they actually go through an approval process where, first of all, you outline, you fill in a thing very similar to if you were going to do a book, and I'm not assuming everyone's done a book audience, local trade chapters, meetups, Slack groups, hobby communities, Facebook. Yes, exactly. So what you do is you put a proposal together, and they have a format for the proposal. So that thing that I showed the image of earlier, that's just the first pass at saying whether they're going to have a conversation with you. Then you put a proposal together. Are audio courses received as well as video courses? I wouldn't, and this is just my opinion, Stella, I don't think that they are received as well, but they do audio courses, and there are quite a few audio courses on LinkedIn at the moment. Typically, though, they're looking for short video with audio, and there's some of it is face to camera, as they call it, and some of it is images that they're using to illustrate the stories or the advice that you're giving. Yes, so the first thing you do is you do this proposal, and in all of that proposal, you're going to share again things like how many followers do you have on LinkedIn, what your topic is, and this time you're going to get more detailed about what the topic is. So a suggested title, what the benefit of that title is, how is it going to benefit your audience, who is it for, and then what will happen is that will be taken to an approval board. And you'll work with somebody who is the content, I can never get their title right. I think they're the content manager. So I have a content manager called Cara. When I have a new idea for what I think might be a good course, I send that idea to her. She helps me refine the idea, and actually we work on this table of contents. So one of the key things that we put together is the table of contents. And in that table of contents, at the point that it is put forward to the approval board, we have a title for each of the scripts. So each of the little videos, and each video is going to be about 500 words. So it's going to be about 4 to 5 minutes long by the time you deliver it. So we have a list of titles, and then we have learning goals, a description of what is the learner going to walk away with when they've watched this little video. Now, that table of contents and the proposal form go to this approval board. They meet on Tuesdays every week, and they review the proposals coming from the content managers. And then they either give feedback on, this is the reason why we wouldn't use this, or maybe we've got too many of these kind of things already. So for example, they had a big rush of people coming forward with diversity related topics, and they snapped a lot of those up. They've been slowing down on that because they had so many of them and so many people putting great courses forward that they said they were getting a little overloaded in that topic. And so they've been focusing on finding people to do other topics. So you might get some feedback that this is a great program, but at the wrong time. If your content manager puts it forward, there's a pretty good chance that there's a good chance that it's going to be taken seriously, because they know what the board is looking for. But sometimes the board will say, this isn't a topic that we're focusing on at the moment, or we're trying to find courses on other things, or given our schedule at the moment, we're not going to prioritize this one. And then, they might come back to it later. Sometimes what they do is they come back and say, good basic idea, but we'd like to see this. So for example, my first course, they came back and said, okay, we like this, but we're not really seeing how it's targeted at project managers. So can you refine the learning objectives to make it clear how it's project management related? And so I had to make some changes. It went to a second approval meeting and got approved. So this table of contents is key. Then what we get to is once your thing has been approved, and I'm going to show you a timeline in a minute, you go to contract, you get a content editor assigned to you, and that content editor works with you to actually convert the table of contents into scripts. So you draft scripts, and they give you the format to follow for that. And the content editor will make suggestions on how to refine those scripts to make them as effective as possible. They want to convey as much information in as short space of time as possible, because people have short attention spans. They typically, as I say, are 450 to 500 words for a video. Occasionally, they might let you go to maybe 600 words if it's a particularly heavy and important topic, but you really are getting it down to, the bare bones to be able to get information across. Once that table of contents and all the scripts are prepared, they start building the storyboard. And so this is where the content editor is going to sit down and figure out, how will we represent what Ruth is talking about? So they're going to take that text, break it out into sections and say, okay, this is somewhere where we're going to use face to camera. This is so you'll see the author talking. This is somewhere where we're going to use some sort of pre-recorded stock content. So that's what they call B-roll. That sometimes they put little kind of like PowerPoint slides together, or little animations and things like that to illustrate a point. Sometimes they're just going to have a slide where, it's a list of the points that you're making, or bullet points, or whatever it is. And they storyboard all of this out. Your content editor does that. So they take care of all of that. So how's this been working during COVID-19? Before COVID-19 occurred, you went to their studios in California, and I will mention those in a moment. You went to their studios in California, you were assigned a director, your content editor was there, you had lighting people, you know, camera people, you had everything that you needed, and they recorded the sessions in the studio. You were usually there for like 2 or 3 days. They did all the recording and everything, re-recorded anything that went wrong, and then you were done and it went to production. During COVID, they decided to do remote recording and they pivoted really, really quickly. So I have never done a studio recording. All of my courses have been done in my own home. So what they do is they package up a whole bunch of stuff and it arrives in these boxes. What you can't see from these boxes is that several of them are very, very heavy. That by the time the boxes arrived, your team has already determined the best place in your home to do the recording based on the light and the size of the room and what you can see and what the camera is going to pick up and all of that kind of stuff. And very often, in my case, they've always done it in my office, but other people have ended up recording in a corner of their dining room, you know, because the layout looks really good or whatever it might be. And what you have to be prepared for is that space is going to be a studio. If you're recording at home, it's going to be a studio for 2 or 3 days. So you don't want it to be in the middle of the living room. You know, you don't want it to be in the kitchen because the camera and everything is going to stay up for until the recording is over and you pack everything up again. So what you can see in the middle here is my first studio. I mean, you can't see all of it. I've labeled the Diva light because I love the name of that. So my first studio was in my first house in Durham, and they sent me this Diva light, which is the very bright light that lights up most of the stage. And then we use these smaller lights. I was going to point, but that doesn't work. They use these smaller lights to balance out the lighting and get rid of shadows and things like that. That Diva light is, excuse my language, as hot as hell. So it's an amazing light. They can do all sorts of things about the color and the intensity and the warmth and all of that kind of stuff. But it generates a huge amount of heat. So even on a cool day, I was finding it very sweaty standing in front of that light. By the time I got to do my next course, which was recorded in my office in Southport in a condo, they were not using the Diva light anymore because they had upgraded the cameras. So every time they sent me equipment, it was slightly different than the time before, but also it was always being upgraded. So that simplified things. I'm betting the next question is, where would your studio be? It would have been Amy, but I'm noticing that time is marching on. So I think I need to speed things up. But it is worth thinking about, you know, where is the light good? So for example, in that middle picture there, you see the leaves through the window. They had a few problems with that window because the light changed in the course of the day. So when we were recording in the morning, the light was one way and then the sun came around and they had to make adjustments. Oh, I see Mr. Lambert's in the house. Hi, Mr. Lambert. You're muted, so we can't hear the obscenities that you're shouting at me. So that's good. So in this second room that you can see, the challenge was that the windows, we didn't have as much problem with the direct light, but there were windows all around. This is a clock tower. And so there's 8 windows in 4 pairs. And so that was a slightly different challenge with the lighting. So there's always something. What they do is they send you these boxes and you essentially put your studio together. So you unpack all the boxes, you follow their instructions. They have some fabulous instructional videos that describe how to put everything together. And you tweak and twiddle and fiddle until you've got everything assembled. I personally found it fascinating because it gave me an insight into what studio work is like. You know, how do you put a studio together? I know some speakers have been irritated beyond belief because what happens is you put everything together and then you meet with your team and they have you move and tweak and twiddle and fiddle until everything is just so. So with that Diva light, for example, it's actually longer one way than it is wide. They had me turning and pivoting it and then said, no, we want it back the way it was. They would set it to a cooler setting, then decide that's not what they wanted, and I'd have to go back and reset it to a warmer setting. These other lights you can see, they would have me move them, you know, like an inch or 2 inches or 3 inches at a time in order to make sure that the lighting was just right. And then they would change their minds again and put it back to where we'd started. So it is very picky, fiddly stuff to do. As I say, I personally don't mind it because I know they're trying to create the best studio they can from the space that we have. I have not come across any LinkedIn courses that utilize animation tools like Doodly or Adobe Animation that would have removed the need for a physical studio set. Are these methods frowned upon by LinkedIn? I'm not sure I can answer that categorically, Paul. In fact, I know I can't answer it categorically. One of the challenges I would imagine is probably intellectual property. So LinkedIn have teams that will create visuals, but they don't do the Doodly or the Adobe Animation because it isn't their product, and they would have to license it in order to be able to use it. That would be my guess. So the idea of using animation and the idea of using these kind of tools to convey ideas is absolutely regarded as perfectly okay at LinkedIn, but it has to be something that they can create themselves. That is one of the things that's worth mentioning as well, is if you use anything from someone else, you have to get a statement from that third party saying that you're authorized to use the content. LinkedIn will not use images and things like that unless the owner of the image has given permission. And I've done that with a few things where I've used stuff for my courses where I've had to get permission from people to say that I can use their content. So this is my first team. So the guy on the top left, that's Chris Hoche, he was my content editor. So he is the person who put together the storyboard. He's the person that helped me edit and refine my scripts. The guy in the middle at the top with the big microphone, he's the director. So that is Zach. He pulled everybody together and got everyone working together, and he dictated the rhythm of the day when we were recording. So he determined when we started, how long we went, when we took a break. They always ask the author, you know, when do you need to take a break or whatever, but the director is the one that managed whether or not we did another take, whether or not there might have been a problem with the sound. He would get Oscar, who's bottom left, he would get Oscar to very quickly upload like a running sample, and we would do a quick review of one of the sample videos and make sure that the recording was going okay and the sound levels looked good. Oscar is absolutely, bar none, they're all absolutely great, but Oscar is fabulous. He is the technical guy, has been on my programs. He's been the technical person who remotely manages the camera. So he takes remote control of the camera and the computer and everything else. He manages everything from the West Coast. He also is teleprompter guy. And I had no idea how amazing it can be to have someone running a teleprompter until I worked with Oscar. He has the most amazing knack of knowing when you're going to speed up and when you're going to slow down. He really reads your body language and your behavior super well, so that teleprompter is moving at just the pace that you are. And he's absolutely amazing. And then Sebastian on the bottom right there, he's our lighting guy. So, and this was for this particular group of people was for my first course. I had some of the same people in my second course, but not all of them. And again, some of the same people in my third course, but not all of them. Oscar was the lighting person. So he was constantly monitoring to make sure that the lighting looked good, that the sun coming around didn't mean that I was now in shadow. And so every so often he would be saying, you know, we need to move this light now, we need to adjust for this kind of thing. And they did all of this remotely. They were all on the West Coast. They got up at 7 o'clock in the morning to start recording with me so that we could start at a decent time, my time. And they basically went as long as I did. So if I wanted to record the whole thing in one day, they were recording it in one day with me. So absolutely amazing. All the teams have been incredible, super professional people, very experienced with video and audio and recording and direction. And I know they don't look old enough to be very experienced, but they are. So I cannot recommend the technical teams highly enough. They do a fabulous, fabulous job. And it's been the way they pivoted from studio to the remote recording was just absolutely amazing. So on the previous slide, you saw that I had very valuable equipment in my house, which was a little scary. The most expensive thing was always the camera. It's not a great picture that I managed to get from online here, but this is actually the studios that they have in California. So they are in Carpinteria. They are reopening the studios, and people are going to now have the option of whether they go to the studios or whether they still record from home. I'm in two minds because I think it might be fun to actually go to a studio, but I don't like flying. So I'll have to wait and see whether I'm going to go over there. There's some things they can do when they're in the studio that's more difficult to do remotely. And obviously they set up the room, so you don't have to unpack all of that stuff and put it together and then work with them to tweak and twiddle and fiddle, as I mentioned earlier. On the right-hand side, you see Andy Jordan, in case you don't know who he is. This is Andy recording in Carpinteria, I can't say that word, in California. This is Andy recording in California before COVID locked things down, which made it difficult for him to keep recording because he lives in Honduras and they were not shipping equipment that far. So they were pretty much only shipping to people in the continental US, I think. But anyway, so this is good old Andy doing his green screen here so that you can see what the recording looks like. How did you get comfortable? You sound and look so natural with all these people watching you and guiding you. Well, the funny thing is you start to forget about them after a while. So they become friends. One of the reasons that it works is they do become friends, and we're a team working together towards creating an experience for the audience. And I wouldn't have wanted to do this any sooner than I did it, because I had practiced by doing speaking engagements and so on stage and stuff like that. So I was really, really grateful for having had these other experiences. But it really is, I can't describe enough how much it is a partnership. Your editor only wants to edit what they need to in order to really refine the message and make sure it's as punchy as possible. Your technical people are there because they want to make sure that, the lighting and the sound and everything shows you up in the best light and also gives the audience the best possible experience. And once you get into that mindset, you're all recording this thing. You may be the person standing up and speaking, but you're all a team doing your piece. And it doesn't feel so much like you're talking to all of these people in the room. It just feels like you're all working together on something to get a project done. So that was my mindset, is that it was completing a project with the appropriate team of people. And other people I've spoken to have said the same thing. In many ways, it's easier actually than standing up and speaking on stage, because in some ways it's easier because people aren't going to interrupt you. They're not going to throw you off course and all of that kind of stuff. If, on the other hand, we do miss, it's like people who are in the theater versus people who are in movies and on TV. They say that, they miss that sense of the audience being right there. It is different. It is different to be doing it in front of camera. At the same time, if you screw it up, you get a do-over. So, we can do multiple takes. They do things like mumble reads, where you can have a practice read through first so that you can practice tripping over all the words, and then you start recording it. For some people, that little pre-rehearsal is really important. I actually found that the mumble read got in my way, because very often the first time I read it was the best time. So we learned that quite quickly and started doing that differently. So I am aware of the times, and I see that a few people have had to drop off. So here's the timeline that you go through. So you do your proposal with the draft table of contents with the help of your content manager. They submit it for the approval process, and the board then takes a look at it. And once that process has been completed, if your course is approved, you then go to contract, and the contracts department takes care of everything for that. You then go to script writing and editing, and that's where you're going to work with that guy that was top. It doesn't have to be that guy, but the equivalent of that guy who's top left. And Diane, I just wanted to say the other reason of how I've got comfortable is just doing a lot of speaking. Basically, every time you speak, you get a little more comfortable. But I don't want to be 100% comfortable because it means I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. So I actually always want that little sort of nervous quiver, butterflies in the stomach thing going on. The worst presentations I've ever done are the ones where I've gone in really, really confident, and then I've completely forgotten what it was I was trying to say, or completely missed something that, or not engaged with the audience. So we're doing our script writing and editing. Then they go off and do the storyboarding. You're not involved in the storyboarding. You don't even necessarily see the storyboard because they're going to do all of that sort of production support and everything. You meet the team. So they're going to pull the team together, introduce you to all of those key people, and you're going to meet with the director producer in order to determine whereabouts the recording will take place. If it's going to be in your home, if it's in one of the studios, they're just going to assign you the studio. So as I said, you're going to choose the location with your director. Then you receive the equipment. So they're going to agree with you a week that is going to be cut out for your recording. If you're doing it in your home, I think it's 3 days if you go to the studios. So you're going to receive the equipment. They aim to get it to you on the Monday of the week that you're doing the recording. It usually comes a little bit before that though, so that you've got time to set it up. You take your Monday to set it up, and then you're going to meet with the team to refine it. So you're building your studio and getting their help to complete that build out. And then you record the program, and I'll go a little quicker on the other ones. So you record the program. It usually takes 1, 2, depending on the length of the course, maybe 3 days. I mentioned there that if you do go for an advance, you get half of your advance at the time that the contract is signed, or within about 15 days of that. Once your recording is over, you pack up the studio into those same boxes that they came in, and they send a FedEx guy to come and pick it up. So you don't have to take it anywhere or do anything. They've sent you the labels. They usually send you sticky tape as well, so you can get everything back in the boxes. So do not rip up the boxes because you're going to need them to send everything back. You tape everything up, you put the appropriate labels on, you call FedEx, and FedEx shows up and picks it up from your doorstep. Need to drop off, and thanks, Molly. Then it goes to production. While production is going on, if you're going to have quiz questions or any kind of tests that you're going to use to help people check their knowledge, that's when you're developing those quiz questions. They finally formally name, so you've had a working title up until that point. They formally named the program based on testing and SEO, and they've done focus groups on which name is most attractive to people. They're going to package it up so that it looks pretty, and when it lands on the site, it looks really good. And then you get to your launch. They give you a launch date a few weeks before, usually 2 or 3 weeks before. They'll tell you what the target launch date is. You usually have a general idea before then of what it's going to be. But the final launch date isn't confirmed until pretty close to the time, just in case there are any hiccups along the way. And on launch date, I find the process very frustrating because I'm very often the last person to know that my course is live. So other people will be commenting on LinkedIn, and they haven't even notified me yet. They're supposed to notify me as soon as a few of us are challenging that, saying they need a better way of letting us know. And then we can start sharing the link. They're looking to us to do quite a bit of the marketing and promotion on it. And hopefully at this point, you're going to start earning some money. Again, within 30 days of the launch of the program, you'll get the other half of your advance if you elect to take an advance. I'm more and more leaning towards not having an advance, and then seeing what the earnings are when I get to that. I want to hear where it was like to feel all the energy from new connections, visibility on LinkedIn, good tips on managing. The interesting thing was that it was initially a bit of a trickle, and I think this is pretty typical, is your first course, because even if you have credibility, unless you're a very well-known speaker, your first course may or may not get, like a deluge of people watching it. So my first course was a slow burn, and enough that they said it was a successful course. I think their measure is they need 300 views per course per month to consider it successful. I think that's the number. And my first course was a slow burn. So I gradually got people connecting with me and following. The other thing they recommend is that you put your creator mode on so people can follow you without having to connect to you. So you don't have to do anything. They just become followers automatically because that's an option for them to follow. And then to me, the biggest challenge has been filtering out the people who are my audience versus people who want to sell me something. So one of the things that you do get bombarded with is a lot of people who are, you know, they're the coach for coaches, or they're the business advisor for people who have coaching companies or whatever. And so I've got pretty picky about what connections I accept. It either needs to be someone I know or someone that is recommended to me by someone I know. So like if Lee says, oh, you should be in touch with this person, I trust Lee, so I will connect with them. Or it needs to be someone that I'm recognizing is in the project management community. So if they actually are a project manager, PMO, whatever, then I accept the invitation. Other invitations I'm more leery of, because I do not want all of those pitches about, you know, we can sell you this and get you more leads and all of that kind of stuff. Would you suggest publishing beginning content to something like YouTube to establish a viewer base before you try your hand at LinkedIn? That's a great question, Paul. I didn't. I mean, the only things I have on YouTube or Vimeo are where I'm using videos as course content in my own courses, because I do create my own courses on my own platform, and I need a video platform to be able to do that from. I didn't do that. You're welcome, Kelly. I didn't do that. Sort of build up a YouTube presence, and also my experience is the YouTube audience and the LinkedIn audience don't necessarily overlap a great deal for the kind of topics we're talking about. You know, the people who watch LinkedIn learning courses are probably watching YouTube for music videos or something like that, but they're not necessarily going there for course type materials. So it doesn't necessarily translate. And the other thing you want to be careful of is having the same content in too many places. There's definitely value to having a written version, a recorded version, you know, a paid version, all of those things. But you don't want it in too many places, because LinkedIn will also consider, is this fresh content? So you don't want it to be content that you've already published. But yeah, the idea of having some sort of following, I'm sure LinkedIn would take that into account when they're saying, you know, what's your following? There's your LinkedIn followers, and then there's your social media followers in general. So that is one of the considerations. But I didn't specifically feel the need to do that, and I don't seem to have suffered because of it. We've been taking questions as we've gone along. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to stay on. And if you have any questions you want to ask by email, or you want to set up a separate chat to talk to me about this or any other topic, you can email me at ruthpearce@projectmotivator.com. You can check out the website. We're actually in the process of developing and launching a new website, so that will be changing in the next few weeks. And I'm happy to answer any questions now, or happy to answer any questions via email at a different time, because I know we've gone a little bit long today.
You are actually totally fine on time. We've got until about 7 o'clock tonight. So one thing, okay. I just put this to the chat, and then I'm going to pivot back. But for those of you that are members of the chapter, your PDUs will be submitted within 3 to 5 business days. And for those of you that are self-reporting, it's C106JQL6HG. And that's in the chat. I just always like to repeat it, so in case it goes missed, it helps with some of that. But I wanted to open it up for anybody that's got questions or comments too, because we do still have some time to network and talk through things.
So average earnings, that's a tough one, Jason. I'm not sure that I can comment to the average earnings, because I'm in that particular niche of project managers. And so what people typically say when I was asking people what could I expect, was they said that typically it's going to be somewhere between a car payment and a mortgage payment each month, once you've paid off your, once you've caught up with your advance. But that also depends a bit on how many courses you have. When you have more courses, they tend to seed interest between one and the other. You know, so someone does my burnout course, they go and check out my mindfulness course and so on. So the more courses you have, the more traction you see on all of the courses. So that's another factor. But yeah, that's what someone said to me was somewhere between a car payment and a mortgage payment every month. And of course, some people are doing way more courses. So Andy Jordan, I think I like to think that he's doing much better than that. There are some people whose courses are phenomenally popular. You know, they're getting hundreds of thousands of views, which I'd love to be able to say that mine have got those, but they don't. Mine have got thousands of views, but not hundreds of thousands. So LinkedIn's preferred length for a course, it depends on the topic, but typically they're going for 10 to 14 videos of about 4 to 5 minutes each. You can have exercise materials and handouts and things that you can provide as well, so that people can have extra exercises to do, and also little questions that check people's knowledge, so that you have a question after each of the sections. They're multiple choice questions, so you get to, you know, say, or fill in the gap. So multiple choice questions or fill in the gap. So there's other content that you can use to supplement the content. But mine are typically just a little bit under an hour. So people are getting either 0.75 or 1 PDU for each of my courses. I know there are some that are much longer. There are some that are more like programs as well, where it's much more in-depth because it's training someone to do something specific. And so some of those are much longer with many, many more videos. So, you know, and many, many more sections. So it's all sorts of things depending on the topic and what the purpose is. Are you teaching someone to do something? There are some micro certifications out there, or some certification courses where you can specifically get certification in things like Cisco technology and stuff like that, where the courses are longer and it's much more involved. So the answer is it depends. Sorry about that, Jason.
Is there anybody else on the line that is currently doing courses, or maybe this is a good idea trigger and you're thinking about doing courses?
And while people are thinking about that, Diane asked, how did I get into the project management profession? I didn't talk about it earlier. It was because my project manager was deported. And that is all I will say right now. So back in 1992, I was on a project in New York. My project manager, for various reasons, was deported, and they had to decide whether to make their technical person, which was me, into the project manager because I already had a relationship with the client, or did they bring over another project manager who wasn't familiar with the project or the client? And they elected for option A, and that was it. I was a project manager until 2016. Are the views counted by course video view, course completion, or something else? But I believe that the duration has to be 20 seconds. So someone has to stay on and watch at least the first video for a period of time. 20 seconds doesn't sound like very much to me. Once they pass that threshold, it counts. So they don't actually have to complete the course for you to get credited with that view. I've taken one of the free courses with LinkedIn Premium and enjoyed it. So every LinkedIn Premium member has full access to LinkedIn Learning, all 16,000 plus courses. So if you have your own LinkedIn Premium membership, or your corporation has bought it so that everybody who has a LinkedIn membership that they can use it. Some libraries have bought a general LinkedIn membership so that people can go to the library, use the computers there, and use the library sign-on. And all of those give you free access, or access to the LinkedIn Learning is included in all of those things. You can also buy individual courses. So if there's one course that you want to do, you can go and find that course on LinkedIn Learning, and most of them are around $40 to have access limited just to that one course. Do you seem to spot an upward tick in views when people share the courses on their personal LinkedIn? Yes. Yeah. So one of the things that happens pretty much automatically is when someone completes the course, it posts on their LinkedIn. I mean, they can stop it if they want to, but most people let it go through. It posts on their LinkedIn, you know, I just completed this course. And it's fascinating actually to watch the completion messages in all the different languages. I'm gradually seeing that more and more languages are showing up as people, even though the course is in English, they're watching it in different locations. So yeah, when people share, then you do see an uptick. It can be hard to tell though, because as we were talking about earlier when Jason was asking, is that what counts as being a view isn't necessarily someone getting all the way to completion. So sometimes I'll see lots of completions happen in a day and I don't see many new views because those people who completed today were viewing earlier in the week, you know, and their views already counted. But when they share, and sometimes people will just share something saying I completed it and people congratulate them and hopefully they go and look at the course. Other times they actually share the course with their audience and say, I took this course and it was really meaningful for project management, so you go do it too. So it all depends. Okay.
I think this has been great, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this tonight too, and then to connect with all of us. So, you know, and that's something, I mean, I know I've watched one. I'm planning on watching the other two as well. Just
and then share it
your
with your
voice.
network, right? You must share it
Yes.
with your network.
Yes. You know, and even hearing your voice is relaxing.
One of the things I should do, because I'm really, really bad at this whole promotion thing, is share one of the links at least. So this is my most recent one and most successful one, which is about burnout. If you go to that link, you'll be able to see links to my mindfulness one and my strengths-based project management one. If you do have access to LinkedIn, please take a look at them and you know, please share with other people, because that not only is that about income, but it also makes it easier to get further courses accepted. So my next course, which we're recording in August and should come out in November, is about bravery for project managers. So that will be the 4th course, and it's about what is bravery, why do we need it, how do we get it? Okay.
That sounds great. Well, on behalf of the Baton Rouge PMI chapter, I wanted to, like I said, thank you for coming tonight and taking your time. And I wanted to thank all of you that keep showing up with us every month. We appreciate it. So just another couple quick announcements. Our next virtual meeting is going to be on August 9th. We're going to have Cicero from Smart Sheets sharing dashboard visualization best practices. And like I did mention, we do have all our virtual meetings set up that are available on our calendar. So if y'all get an opportunity to go to the website, y'all can sign up for any ones through October right now. And we'll be steadily adding content to that as well as the in-persons. And our next in-person is going to be in Baton Rouge next Tuesday on the 19th at Drusilla Seafood. And that's going to be Jim Blevins on the new normals of project controls. So thank y'all very much. And any questions y'all have, please feel free to reach out.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I'm going to have dinner.
Thanks, all.
Thank you. Bye.
Great presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason.